Hi everyone. Today in my video, I'm going to talk about chemical coordination and integration. So what is chemical coordination actually, and who carries out chemical coordination in our body? So this function is carried out by hormones. Now, what are hormones exactly? Hormones are chemical messengers. According to NCERT, hormones are defined as non-nutrient chemicals. They are defined as non-nutrient chemicals which act as intercellular messengers, and they are produced in trace amounts. So there was a NEET question, previous NEET question, saying that hormones are non-nutrient chemicals that act as intracellular messengers and are produced in trace amounts. It's not correct. It is non-nutrient chemicals, that is, we can't use it like how ATP is used as an energy source. So this is not an energy source. This is acting just as a messenger, which acts as intercellular messenger and is available in trace amounts. Now, in this picture, you can see major endocrine glands. So the endocrine glands located in different parts of the body are pituitary gland, pineal gland, thyroid gland, adrenal gland, pancreas, ovary in females, and testis in males. In addition to these, there are some other organs like GIT, gastrointestinal tract, heart, as well as kidneys produce hormones. Okay, so these all are the major endocrine glands, and additionally there are glands that produce hormones like gastrointestinal tract, liver, kidney, and heart. Now we'll talk about each gland in detail. So we'll talk about hypothalamus first. So hypothalamus is located at the basal part of diencephalon, that is the forebrain. So it is located at the basal part, and it contains several group of neurosecretory cells. So it has lot of cells. They are called as neurosecretory cells. They are also called as nuclei. And this nuclei produce hormones. Okay. So hypothalamus, it contains several neurosecretory cells. They are called as nuclei and they produce hormones. These hormones, they regulate the synthesis and secretion of pituitary hormones. And there are two types of hormones. One is releasing hormone and one is inhibiting hormone. Releasing hormone example is gonadotropin releasing hormone, and inhibiting hormone example is somatostatin. Somatostatin. So basically, soma means cell and static means to stop. So you can remember inhibiting means something like here there is inhibition. So inhibitory hormone is somatostatin example, and gonadotropic releasing hormone, this stimulates the pituitary synthesis. And the examples are FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone. So let's go through it again. So hypothalamus is located at the basal part of the diencephalon, and it contains neurosecretory cells. They are called as nuclei. So they have hypothalamus. We are talking about hypothalamus. So hypothalamus has neurosecretory cells. They are called as nuclei, and these give hormones. And they synthesize hormones in pituitary, which are of two types. One is releasing hormone and one is inhibiting hormone. Inhibiting hormone example is somatostatin. Somatostatin. Soma means cell and statin means to stop. Whereas this is gonadotropin releasing hormone. Examples is follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormones. So basically, these hormones stimulate the pituitary synthesis and release gonadotropins. Now coming to pituitary gland. So pituitary gland is located in a bony cavity that is called as sella turcica. So this is called as sella turcica. If you see how separately how the pituitary gland and hypothalamus looks, basically it looks like something like this, like it is attached to the hypothalamus through a stalk. Okay, and anatomically this is how it looks. So it is divided into adenohypophysis and neurohypophysis. This is also called as anterior pituitary or adenohypophysis, and this part is called as posterior pituitary or neurohypophysis. So let me repeat again. So this is anatomically how the pituitary gland is divided. It is divided into two. One is adenohypophysis or the anterior pituitary, and posterior pituitary also called as neurohypophysis. And this region is called pars distalis, and this ring-like structure is called pars intermedia. And in some individuals, they both can be joined also. Okay, you won't see any differentiation, they both will be attached together. Whereas sometimes it might be together and sometimes it might be separate also. Now, this pars distalis region of the pituitary, it is also called as anterior pituitary. It produces a group of hormone. So how to remember pars distalis, what exactly hormones it gives? So you can remember it as GTPLF. Okay, whereas pars intermedia, it just gives one hormone, MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. Okay, pars intermedia gives melanocyte stimulating hormone. And what is GTPLF? It is growth hormone and thyroid stimulating hormone, prolactin, luteinizing hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone. Whereas the posterior pituitary just gives two hormones, that is oxytocin and vasopressin. So let me repeat it again. Pituitary's gland is located in the bony cavity that is called sella turcica, and anatomically it is divided into two parts. One is anterior pituitary and another one is posterior pituitary. And anterior pituitary consists of pars distalis and pars intermedia. Sometimes it can be attached or separate, whereas posterior pituitary is also called as neurohypophysis. And pars distalis mainly, what hormones does it produce is growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, and prolactin, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. Pars intermedia gives melanocyte stimulating hormone. And whereas the posterior pituitary gives two main hormones, that is oxytocin and vasopressin. Now, so let us talk about pineal gland. So pineal gland is basically situated on the dorsal part of the forebrain. Okay, it is situated in the dorsal part of the forebrain, and it releases a hormone called as melatonin. You guys must have heard about melatonin gummies or melatonin, which is mainly used to maintain the normal sleep cycle. So if this hormone is disturbed in our body, we do not get normal sleep, because this hormone plays an important role in regulation of our 24 hours rhythm of our body. And it's not just concerned with the sleep, it also helps in maintaining the body temperature. Also, it helps in pigmentation, and it plays a role in menstruation as well as metabolism. So, pineal gland is situated on the dorsal side of the forebrain, and it secretes a hormone called as melatonin, which helps in maintaining a normal rhythm of the body. And along with this is the main function, sleep cycle, but along with it, it helps in regulating the body temperature, maintaining the pigmentation, and also menstrual cycle, as well as normal metabolism of the body. Now coming to thyroid gland. So I have made a video on thyroid gland. I'll link it. Please have a look at it, because I have explained it in detail, what happens in thyroid disorders and all about thyroid gland. But I can explain here also. So thyroid gland is actually a butterfly shaped like structure which is composed of two lobes and which is joined, two lobes on either side of the trachea. See, this is the trachea, this is the thyroid, and it is joined by something called as isthmus. Okay, this joining is called isthmus. And thyroid gland, when you see, it looks as like there are follicular cells in stromal tissue. So this is the stromal tissue and this is the follicular cells. And each thyroid follicle, it is composed of follicular cells, and these give two hormones, T3 and T4. So what is meant by T3 is triiodothyronine and T4 is thyroxine. So basically iodine plays an important role in maintaining the normal hormone synthesis in the thyroid. So what is this 3 and 4 is basically the number of the iodine atoms. So it is triiodothyronine and tetraiodothyronine. So when there is a deficiency of thyroid hormone, it leads to a condition called as hypothyroidism, normally where there is an enlargement of the thyroid gland, and that is called as goiter. And if there is like overproduction of the thyroid hormone, it is called as hyperthyroidism. So in both the cases, what happens exactly is thyroid is responsible for maintaining cardiac output, metabolic rate, and normal activity. So when there is not much production, it leads to hypothyroidism, where you can feel like a swelling on your neck. There'll be unexplained weight gain, decreased cardiac output, and in hyper it will be extreme, like a person will be weak, he or she will have increased cardiac output and increased basic metabolic rate. So now coming to parathyroid gland. So in humans there are four glands. They are present on the back side of the thyroid gland. So if this is the thyroid gland backside, you can see four glands. These are called as parathyroid glands, and these glands give hormone called as parathyroid hormone. And the main function of the parathyroid hormone is to regulate the level of calcium ions in our body. So what does this hormone exactly do is, in the blood, it increases the calcium levels. In the blood, it increases the calcium levels. It also stimulates the reabsorption of calcium from renal tubules. And also increases calcium absorption from digested food. So therefore, parathyroid gland and the hormone itself is a hypercalcemic hormone. It increases blood calcium levels. So along with, I have mentioned here, thyroid hormones as well as the parathyroid hormone, together they maintain the calcium balance in the body. Let me mention something else also. Along with T3 and T4, thyroid glands also secretes a protein hormone. And the name of the hormone is called as thyrocalcitonin, which regulates blood calcium levels. So this TCT and PTH work together in controlling the levels of calcium in our body. So let me go through it again. Parathyroid gland produces parathyroid hormone, and there are four glands situated, and the main function is to increase the calcium levels in the blood. So it's increasing calcium levels in the blood. It is also increasing the reabsorption of calcium from the renal tubules, and not just that, from the digested food also it is increasing calcium. So basically there's a lot of calcium. That's why this gland is like, its main function is to produce hormones which is hypercalcemic in nature. Now coming to thymus gland. This thymus gland is a lobular structure that is located on the dorsal side of the heart. It plays a major role in development of our immune system. This thymus gland, it secretes a hormone, a peptide hormone, and that is called as thymosin. And this thymosin plays a major role in differentiation of T lymphocytes. Basically, what happens is these T lymphocytes mature in the thymus gland itself, which provide cell-mediated immunity. And what is meant by cell-mediated immunity is, it is occurring within the cell. And this immunity secretes cytokines, not antibodies. So there are two kinds of immunity, which I'll be explaining later in another chapter. It is cell-mediated and humoral. So in humoral immunity, what happens is whenever an antigen is there, our body produces antibodies against it. But in cell-mediated immunity, cytokines are produced, and they are done by T lymphocytes. And this is slow as compared to the other immunity, but gives a prolonged effect, a permanent effect. So let me go through the thymus gland again. It is a lobular structure. It is a lobular structure that is situated on the dorsal side of the heart, and it plays a major important role in the immune system. So it secretes a peptide hormone called as thymosin, and this thymosin plays an important role in differentiation of T lymphocytes, which produce cell-mediated immunity. That is, this immunity secretes cytokines and no antibodies. Now, what happens is, it doesn't just help in cell-mediated immunity, it also helps in humoral immunity by helping it to form antibodies. So it is helping in both kinds of immunity. In old individuals, what happens is there is decreased production of thymosins. That's why we say that as a person becomes old, their immune response is weak. Why? Because there is decreased production of thymosin in old people. Now coming to adrenal gland. So this is the, sorry about that, this is the kidney, and on top of kidney you can see the adrenal gland. Okay, so this is the kidney. So one body has one pair of adrenal glands, or one at the anterior part of each kidney, and it has two types of tissues. That is, one is adrenal cortex and one is adrenal medulla. So outer cortex and inner medulla. So this is the cross section when you see. So this adrenal medulla secretes hormone called as adrenaline, as well as noradrenaline. So adrenaline is also called as epinephrine, and noradrenaline is also called as norepinephrine. These both together, they are called as catecholamines. What are they called as? Catecholamines. And this adrenaline and noradrenaline are rapidly secreted whenever there is any kind of emergency. Like you see a snake, you don't just sit there, you run, right? That is because of adrenaline and noradrenaline, because they are secreted in response to stress. So that's why they are called as emergency hormones. They're called as emergency hormones, or hormones of fight or flight. So these hormones, basically, they increase alertness, your pupils will dilate, and there will be piloerection, that is raising of hairs, and sweating. Both these hormones increase the heartbeat and also the rate of respiration. These catecholamines also result in increased concentration of glucose in the blood, and they also help in breaking down of lipids and proteins. So it increases the glucose in the blood. Adrenal cortex can be divided into 3 layers. Now, before I move into, I want to repeat again. So adrenal gland is located on top of the kidney. So we have 2 adrenal glands, and they have 2 types of tissue, outer cortex and inner medulla, adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. They secrete two hormones, that is adrenaline and noradrenaline. Adrenaline also called as epinephrine and noradrenaline also called as norepinephrine. These both together are called as catecholamines. And these are produced in case of an emergency or any case of a stress. So they are called as hormones of fight or flight or emergency hormones. So they increase sweating, alertness, pupillary dilation, they increase heartbeat and also respiratory rate. They also increase the glucose concentration in the blood, and they also help in breakdown of lipids and proteins. Now coming to how are they divided. So basically, they are divided into three layers. Adrenal cortex along with the medulla. So if this is adrenal medulla, this is zona reticularis, and this is zona fasciculata, and this is zona glomerulosa, the outer layer. And this is the capsule. So this is the capsule. This is the medulla. And this is zona reticularis. This is zona fasciculata. And this is zona glomerulosa, outermost layer. So the adrenal cortex secretes many hormones. So the cortex secretes many hormones. They are commonly called as corticoids. So they secrete corticoids. The corticoids which are involved in carbohydrate metabolism are called as glucocorticoids. So there are two types actually, glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. So glucocorticoids, what is the function of it? It mainly helps in carbohydrate metabolism, whereas mineralocorticoids help in water and electrolytes regulation. So, the cortex secretes hormones called corticoids, which are of two types, glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. Glucocorticoids mainly regulate carbohydrate metabolism, whereas mineralocorticoids mainly regulate balance of water and electrolytes. And the main example, the NEET question, the main example of mineralocorticoid in our body is aldosterone. Okay. This is the main mineralocorticoid in our body. Now, cortisol, there is like lot of functions of cortisol. It not only helps in like carbohydrate metabolism and all this, but it also helps in maintaining the cardiovascular system as well as the kidney functions. It also acts on the heart and the kidney. So there are some steroids secreted from the adrenal cortex. They are also called as androgenic steroids. What are they called as? Androgenic steroids. And these androgenic steroids play an important role in the growth of axial hair, pubic hair, and facial hair during puberty. So let me repeat myself again. So cortex secretes corticoids, which are mainly of two types, glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. Glucocorticoids help in carbohydrate metabolism, whereas mineralocorticoids regulate the water and electrolyte balance in our body. And one of the main example of mineralocorticoids in our body is called as aldosterone. And cortex also gives androgenic steroids. They play an important role during puberty by helping in the growth of axial hair, pubic hair, and facial hair. This cortisol also has a major role in the heart and kidney because they help in maintaining cardiovascular system as well as the normal kidney functions. Now, let us talk about aldosterone. So, like we studied, aldosterone is the main mineralocorticoid. Right, I told you that there are glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids. Glucocorticoids, carbohydrate metabolism. Mineralocorticoids is water and electrolyte metabolism. And the main mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. So this aldosterone acts mainly on the renal tubules. And what it does, it helps in sodium and potassium balance. That is, in the kidneys there is sodium absorption, and in kidneys it helps in excretion of the potassium as well as the phosphate ions, and it also helps in RBC production. So what is the aldosterone doing in the kidney? Basically it is helping in sodium and water absorption and excretion of potassium and phosphate ions. That's why whenever there is a kidney damage, there is always an electrolyte discrepancy happening there. And aldosterone also helps in RBC production. Now coming to pancreas, I have discussed in my previous video on digestive system in detail about how the pancreas looks like, what are the ducts, what are the hormones, and like what are the juices and everything. And according to chemical coordination aspect, I'm going to talk about what is important here. So the main thing that is important in the pancreas is it has two types of glands. That is, it is a composite gland. That is, it has exocrine as well as endocrine. It has both exocrine as well as endocrine. And this endocrine pancreas has something called as islets of Langerhans. They are 1 to 2 million islets in our body. Okay, so it is both exocrine and endocrine, and in the endocrine part, there is 1 to 2 million islets of Langerhans. And these islets of Langerhans basically has two types of cells. One is alpha cells and one is beta cells. Alpha cells secrete something hormone called as glucagon, whereas the beta cells, they secrete insulin. So let me repeat again. Pancreas is also called as a composite gland. It is both exocrine and endocrine in nature. And in the endocrine part, there are a lot of islet of Langerhans, and there are like 1 to 2 millions of islets of Langerhans. And there are two main types of cells, that is alpha and beta cells. Alpha cells secrete a hormone called as glucagon, and insulin that is secreted by beta cells. And glucagon is also called as hyperglycemic hormone, whereas insulin is called as hypoglycemic hormone. Okay, it is called as hyperglycemic hormone because it mainly acts on the liver, on the hepatocytes, and it stimulates the breakdown of glycogen. So it leads to glycogenolysis. Glycogenolysis resulting in increase of blood sugar. Okay, so let me tell again. There is alpha cell and beta cell secreted by the islets of the Langerhans, and alpha cells give glucagon, and this glucagon is called as hyperglycemic hormone. It is also called as hyperglycemic hormone. And what is happening here? Basically, this hormone acts on the liver, on the hepatocytes, and it leads to glycogenolysis. What does it lead to? Glycogenolysis. Okay. And then therefore it leads to increased amount of blood sugar. In addition, this hormone also participates in gluconeogenesis. Neogenesis means formation, lysis means breakdown, and genesis means formation. So therefore it contributes to increase in the blood sugar, that is hyperglycemia. That is the reason it is called as hyperglycemic hormone. Okay, so what does the glucagon come from? It is secreted by islets of Langerhans from the alpha cells. It is called hypoglycemic because in the liver cells it leads to glycogenolysis, that is breakdown, and then there is more amount of glucose, that is more blood sugar, and it also leads to gluconeogenesis, that is the formation of glucose. So again, there is more amount of blood sugar in our blood. So that's the reason it is called as hyperglycemic hormone. Whereas now insulin, it is a peptide hormone. Okay, which is secreted by beta cells, that is insulin. Now, insulin is a peptide hormone. Okay, this mainly helps in glucose homeostasis. It basically balances. It helps in glucose hemostasis. So what is it doing? It's basically balancing the amount of glucose. So this basically acts on the hepatic cells, hepatocytes, as well as on the fat cells, that is adipocytes. And then what it does, it enhances the cellular glucose uptake. It enhances the glucose uptake. So once the glucose is used, so there is no more much of glucose, right? So therefore the cellular glucose, when it's being used, there is rapid movement of glucose from blood to the hepatocytes as well as the liver cells. Then there will be decreased blood sugar. That's why if you come across any diabetic patients, sometimes they're given insulin because it is a hypoglycemic hormone. So it reduces the blood sugar. And how it is doing so? Because insulin, the main thing what insulin does is it stimulates the glycogenesis. It stimulates glycogenesis. That is, it stimulates the conversion of glucose to glycogen. And it also causes, therefore, glucose homeostasis. So insulin is secreted by the beta cells of the islets of the Langerhans, and insulin is a peptide hormone. Basically, it uses the glucose. Okay, it enhances the cellular glucose uptake, and it mainly acts on the liver cells, hepatocytes, on the fat cells, adipocytes, leading to hypoglycemia. So whenever this condition is there, like a person becomes hypoglycemic over a long period of time, that person suffers with diabetes mellitus, which is associated with loss of glucose through urine and formation of something that is called as ketone bodies. When ketone bodies are a lot in our body and we are losing glucose through urine, it leads to a complex disorder that is called diabetes mellitus. And many of the diabetic patients are successfully treated with the insulin therapy. Now, coming to testis. Testis and ovary are reproductive organs. We are going to study about this in detail in reproduction chapter. So there is a pair of testes that is present in the scrotal sac. So this is the scrotal sac. You see a pair of testes, and testis performs dual functions as the primary sex organ as well as an endocrine gland. So testis is composed of seminiferous tubules and stromal and interstitial tissue. So there are a lot of seminiferous tubules and a lot of stromal tissues, and in between, like, there are cells called as Leydig cells or interstitial cells. Interstitial means in between the intertubular spaces. They produce a hormone called as androgen, which is also mainly responsible for testosterone. And now, what is the function of this androgen? Basically, it helps in development, maturation, and functions of male accessory sex organs like epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, urethra. These hormones also help in muscular growth. Like the main things, like males have low pitch of voice and aggressiveness and growth of facial and axial hair. That's all happening because of androgens. And they also play an important role in the formation of sperms, that is called as spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis. So androgens also act on central nervous system, and they are also responsible for the male sexual behavior. And these hormones, they produce an anabolic. Anabolic means which is helping, catabolic means which stops. Anabolic effects on proteins and carbohydrates. So let me go through this again. So a pair of testes is present in the scrotal sac, and this testis is not just a primary sex organ, it is also an endocrine gland. And testis is composed of seminiferous tubules and stromal or interstitial tissue. And in between interstitial spaces, in between the interstitial spaces, there are some cells called as Leydig cells or interstitial cells, which produce a group of hormone called as androgens, and they are testosterone. Testosterone is mainly responsible for two things. One is for development and function of male accessory sex organs, as well as for maintaining the low pitch voice, aggressiveness, as well as growth of facial and axillary hair, as well as it helps in formation of spermatogenesis, that is formation of sperms. It also acts on central nervous system and is responsible for the male sexual behavior. And this is mainly, these hormones produce an anabolic effect on proteins and carbohydrates. Now coming to ovary, females have pair of ovaries located in the abdomen, and it is the primary sex organ, primary female sex organ, which produces ovum during the menstrual cycle. Okay, it also produces, in addition, it produces two steroid hormones. They are called as estrogen and progesterone. So it produces estrogen and progesterone. So how is this? So basically, ovary has ovarian follicles. Okay, so when ovarian follicles rupture, they produce estrogen, and the ruptured part is called as corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone. Okay, so let me explain again. So females have pair of ovaries and they produce ovum during menstrual cycle, and they have ovarian follicles. Okay, there is something like ovarian follicles, and these ovarian follicles mainly, they give two things, that is estrogen, and also when it ruptures, when the ovarian follicle ruptures, that ruptured form is called as corpus luteum, which produces progesterone. So estrogen and progesterone are the two steroid hormones. Now, estrogen produces a wide action such as stimulation of growth and like female secondary sex organs like mammary gland development and high pitch of voice, and they also regulate the sexual behavior, whereas progesterone supports pregnancy. It acts on the mammary glands and help in milk production. How does it help in milk production is, it forms alveoli-like structure so that it's easy for milk secretion. So let me repeat, pair of ovaries are there, ovarian follicles give estrogen, and when ovarian follicles rupture, they form a structure called as corpus luteum. They give progesterone, and these both are steroid hormones. And then this estrogen mainly is responsible for activities of female secondary sex organs, that is development of ovarian follicles, mammary gland development, high pitch of voice, and they also regulate the sexual behavior. Whereas progesterone is mainly useful during pregnancy, where it helps in milk formation. Also, it stimulates the milk formation by formation of a sac-like structure to store milk. Okay, that is formation of alveoli. Now coming to hormones of heart, kidney, and gastrointestinal tract. So like I mentioned, these other organs also secrete hormones, and our heart, it secretes a hormone called as ANF. It is called as ANF. It is called atrial natriuretic factor. Natriuretic factor. And this mainly is responsible for dilation of the blood vessels. So it reduces the BP actually. And how it does is, I'll explain you. Whenever there is high BP, high blood pressure in our body, ANF is secreted so that it reduces BP. And how does it reduce BP? By helping it to dilate the blood vessels. So our heart has a hormone, it secretes a hormone from the atrial wall of the heart. Okay, from the atrial wall of the heart, atrial natriuretic factor hormone is released, which mainly dilates the blood vessel. What does it do? It dilates the blood vessel, and therefore it reduces the blood pressure. So it's reducing the blood pressure. So whenever a patient has high BP, ANF is secreted automatically so that it reduces the blood pressure. Now coming to kidney. So in the kidney, in the juxtaglomerular cells, I also made a video on excretory system. Please have a look at it. The juxtaglomerular cells, they secrete a peptide hormone called as erythropoietin. Erythro means red blood cells, poietin means formation. So it helps in RBC formation. So what happens is if there is a kidney failure or a person is suffering from chronic kidney disease, because the kidney is not functioning properly, this hormone is not secreted, the erythropoietin is not secreted. So usually kidney patients have less amount of hemoglobin in the blood and their RBC count is less, so they are prescribed an injection sometimes. So that's what happens in the kidney. And now coming to gastrointestinal tract hormones. So endocrine glands present in the gastrointestinal tract, they secrete 4 hormones. That is gastrin, which mainly helps in HCl secretion, and secretin and cholecystokinin and gastric inhibitory hormone. Okay, so gastrin mainly, the main function of the gastric glands is to stimulate the HCl production. Okay, and secretin, it helps in water and electrolyte balance. And cholecystokinin acts on the pancreas and gallbladders by the secretion of pancreatic juice and bile juice, whereas gastric inhibitory peptide, like the name suggests, inhibitory, it inhibits the gastric secretion. It inhibits the gastric secretion. So other non-endocrine tissues also secrete hormones called as growth factors, which are responsible for normal growth of our body. So one more thing about growth hormone. So in our body, if there is like defect in it, like if there is not much growth hormone produced, it leads to dwarfism. And if there is a lot of growth hormone, that leads to gigantism. So let me repeat the hormones of heart and kidney and GIT. Heart, on the atrial wall of the heart, it secretes ANF, that is called as atrial natriuretic factor, which helps in dilation of the blood vessels. So whenever there is increased blood pressure, this hormone reduces the blood pressure. In the juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney, there is a peptide hormone called as erythropoietin. Like the name suggests, erythro means red blood cells and poiesis means formation. So RBC formation is stopped here. And now coming to gastrointestinal tract, there are 4 types of hormones. Gastrin, which is responsible for HCl secretion. Secretin, which maintains water and electrolyte balance. Cholecystokinin, it helps in production of pancreatic juice and bile juice. And gastric inhibitory hormone, it inhibits the gastric secretion and motility. Now coming to hormone actions. So hormones, like these are the hormones and these are the receptors. So the hormones usually produce their effects on the target tissue by binding to a specific proteins. They are called as hormone receptors, and this is called hormone receptor, and they are situated in the target's tissue only. Okay, they can be present on the cell membrane. When they are present on the cell membrane, they are called as membrane bound receptors. Okay, and so these are the membrane bound receptors which I'm talking about. And binding of this hormone, let me show you again. So a hormone will bind to a hormone receptor which is situated in the target tissue only, and these are present on the cell membrane of the target cells. And these receptors are called as intracellular receptors. These are intracellular receptors. And this binding of a hormone to a receptors leads to the formation of hormone receptor complex. Okay, and on the basis of the chemical nature, hormones are divided into groups. They are divided into 4 groups actually. One is peptide, polypeptide, and protein hormones like insulin, glucagon, and steroids, that is cortisol, testosterone, and iodothyronins, that is thyroid hormones, and amino acid derivatives, that is epinephrine. So let me repeat it again. So the hormone, it binds to the target tissues by binding to specific hormone receptors in the target cells, and which are present on the cell membrane. Okay, those are called as membrane bound receptors, and this complex is called hormone receptor complex. And there are 4 types. One is protein or peptide or polypeptide hormones, that is insulin, glucagon, and steroid hormones, that is cortisol, testosterone, iodothyronin, thyroid hormones, and amino acid derivatives, that is epinephrine. Now this is, I'm talking about protein hormones. Now what happens in the steroid hormones? In the steroid hormones, it doesn't it does not really interact or enter the target cells, but they generate a secondary messenger. So there is no interaction with the target cells. There is gene expression instead, and chromosome function. So here what is happening, hormone receptor complex is there in the target tissue, and there are 4 types: protein hormones, steroid hormones, iodothyronin hormones, amino acid derivatives. Whereas in steroid hormones, there is no interaction with the target cells or the membranes, and there is only gene expression and chromosomal function. Those are called as steroid hormones. I hope you guys have understood like what are the major endocrine glands and what are the other glands, and like what are the functions of it, and how does the actually hormone bind, what is hormone receptor complex. So these are the main things I have covered till now, and now I'm going to discuss about the questions that are on page 341 and 342. Now coming to question 1, that is, define the following. Exocrine gland. So what is an exocrine gland exactly? Exocrine gland is a gland, it is a gland that secretes external to the surface of an organ, that is through duct. Okay, exocrine means external. Okay, whereas endocrine gland is ductless glands that produces directly into the blood. Okay, that secretes directly into blood. Whereas exocrine glands, they form ducts. Endocrine glands are ductless glands that secrete into blood directly. And hormones, like I have told you, they are non-nutrient chemicals. They are non-nutrient chemicals which act as intercellular messengers and are available in trace amounts. Diagrammatically indicate the location of various endocrine glands in our body. So it's there in initial portion of the video where I have explained pituitary gland, pineal gland, location of thymus gland, adrenal gland, testis, and ovaries. Now coming to list the hormones by the following. So hypothalamus is gonadotrophic releasing hormone and somatostatin, and pituitary is MSH. Okay, and I also told you G, T, P, L, F. This is by pars distalis. This is by pars intermedia. Growth hormone, thyroid hormone, prolactin, luteinizing factor, and follicle stimulating hormone. Thyroid T3, T4, and parathyroid is parathyroid hormone, and adrenal is adrenaline or non-adrenaline. Pancreas is, I told you, 2 cells, alpha beta cells in islet of Langerhans, glucagon and insulin. Testis testosterone, and ovary is progesterone. Thymus is thymosin, which helps in both cell-mediated and humoral immunity. Atrium, atrial natriuretic factor. Kidney, antidiuretic hormone. And GI tract is cholecystokinin, secretin, gastroinhibitory peptide, and gastrin, which helps in HCl secretion. So hypothalamus, somatostatin, gonadotrophin, pituitary pars distalis, that is growth hormone, thyroid hormone, prolactin, luteinizing factor, follicle stimulating hormone, whereas pars intermedia gives MSH, thyroid gives T3 and T4, parathyroid hormone, adrenal, adrenaline and noradrenaline, pancreas is alpha cells and beta cells, they give glucagon and insulin, testis gives testosterone, ovary progesterone, thymus thymosin, atrium ANF, kidney is antidiuretic hormone, and from gastrointestinal tract, secretin, gastrin, and cholecystokinin, and gastroinhibitory peptide. Now fill in the blanks. So what are the hormones and what are the target glands? For hypothalamic hormones, the target gland is pituitary glands. And for thyrotropin TSH, it is thyroid glands. Corticotrophin ACTH, it is adrenal cortex. And for gonadotrophins, it is testis and ovary. And for melanotropin, it is posterior pituitary. Now write short notes on the functions of the following. Parathyroid hormones, they are located on the back of the thyroid gland. They help in calcium regulation. So they increase calcium absorption in the blood vessels from the digested food and from the renal tubules. So it is called as hypercalcemic hormones. So thyroid hormones T3 and T4 are there, and they help in regulating the normal basic metabolic activity of the body, heart rate and respiratory rate. So hypothyroidism is there is not much production of the hormones, and hyper is overproduction of the hormones. And thymosin is secreted by thymus glands, and the important thing is they help in maturation of T lymphocytes, which help in cell mediated immunity where there is production of cytokines and not the antibodies, but they also produce antibodies and also help in humoral immunity. Okay, now androgens help in, the main thing is in the androgens you need to remember the Leydig cells, which produce androgens, which give testosterone, which helps in sperm formation. Okay, and glucagon is hyperglycemic hormone, and insulin is hypoglycemic hormone. Both are secreted in pancreas from the alpha cells and the beta cells respectively. Now, give an example of hyperglycemic hormone, that is glucagon, and hypoglycemic hormone is insulin, and hypercalcemic hormone is parathyroid hormone, and gonadotrophic hormones are follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Progestational hormone is progesterone. Okay, progesterone. Blood pressure lowering hormone is ANF. I told you it is produced by the atrial wall of the heart. It reduces the blood pressure by dilating the blood vessels. Androgens and estrogens, that is progesterone. Now, which hormone deficiency is responsible for the following? Diabetes mellitus, insulin deficiency. Goiter by thyroid deficiency. And cretinism by growth hormone deficiency. So what is the mechanism of follicle stimulating hormone? It basically helps in follicular growth and ovulation. Okay, what does the FSH do? Helps in follicular growth and also ovulation. Match the following, like who gives 2T4? Thyroid. Okay, and hypothalamus gives gonadotrophic releasing hormone, and parathyroid gives parathyroid hormone. Okay, and pituitary gives luteinizing hormone. I hope you guys have understood everything about endocrine glands and everything in detail about hormones. If you have any questions, please leave in the comment below. And if you want me to teach any specific topic, you can request a topic in the comment sections below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.